You go back to, 5 years ago of prosperity. And I think that a lot of young people, when they look at the prospects of getting out of college, looking at the economy, looking at the job market, seeing the stories of these young kids getting killed by illegal immigrants, I think that kind of scares some people.
Was there any fear whatsoever where you were like, well, if we start talking about Trump, then we're going to lose this opportunity, this job, we're going to get blacklisted?
No, we were all Team Trump. In Chicago, there was a group of delegates who wanted to change their vote, not vote for Kamala, but through, I think it was the rules board, they were prohibited from actually even changing their vote from Kamala to whoever else they wanted.
How has the political climate changed? Because now it seems as if college campuses are the places where the most division, the most tension is. Is that true? Do you think the tension has worsened and the division has worsened? Paint me the picture of what 4 years of Kamala looks like versus what 4 years of Trump looks like. So I know you started Students for Trump in your dorm room, right?
That's correct, yeah. Well, actually, no, it was in a J.C. Penney's. I was with my mother and grandmother, and I remember seeing Trump come down the golden escalator, and I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, this is the you're fired guy. I'm like, how is this guy going to potentially be the one to beat the coronated queen, Hillary Clinton? And so I just kept doing a little bit of research. I was like, okay, we got a Students for Rubio, we got a Students for Carly Fiorina, Students for Ted Cruz, but there was nothing for Donald Trump. In fact, when you went to CPAC the following year, there was a sea of people wearing Carly Fiorina hats, Marco Rubio hats, Ted Cruz, and you had probably 1 out of every 5, you'd see maybe a MAGA hat. People were kind of scared to do it because the popular thing was to, support all these other establishment-based candidates. And so I just started a Twitter account in singular form. It was StudentsForTrump, and we just started tweeting. During the debates, when the Drudge polls came out, when all the data would come out, we would just post that to Twitter. If he said a zinger during a debate, we'd put that out there. If he attacked Marco Rubio, what was that comment he said about Marco Rubio where he's like, you're thirsty or something? It was something about a water bottle, I don't know. There was a bunch of memes going around, but we would share all that content, all that stuff, and it just naturally kicked off into something that I never really anticipated. I wanted to be an attorney. I never thought that I was going to become like a national political figure, having to fight for some of the very basic freedoms that all of us would like to enjoy every day, like the Second Amendment, freedom of speech. Never thought that we'd have to be on a national stage defending these principles. But really, yeah, it just kicked off and, became a volunteer movement on college campuses across the country. Teamed up with Turning Point, did a lot of great stuff in 2020, and, we're doing it again this cycle. So
let me ask you, at that time, dorm room, right? I want to paint the picture. Well, you said it wasn't a dorm room, but college, right? You were a freshman, though. That was true, right?
Yep, freshman first semester.
Freshman, right? I want to paint the picture in your head. At that time, when the idea came about, because I know it was 3 of you guys that came up with the idea as well. It was 3 of your buddies, or it was just you?
It was me initially, and then I brought other people on board.
That conversation that you were having with them, was there ever a thought or a conversation between them? It's like, maybe we're not qualified enough to talk about these things. Maybe we're not. Was that ever a part of the conversation?
Oh, hell yeah, we were not qualified. That was a learning. That was the biggest learning curve that I've ever had to go through, is learning national politics. Because previously, I'd only volunteered in the Tea Party movement, helped a few local people get elected. Pat McCrory when he was governor of North Carolina. So we just kind of did a deep dive into national politics, and I mean that is so much different than going to your PTA meetings or your local board meetings for the community. You're dealing with a lot of different characters. And I experienced that, I'm sure Laura knows this as well, probably Alex. When you go meet some of these people in D.C., you're like, wow, these are like normal people, and some of them are crazy. And you kind of learn that as you go along through the rigmarole, as I call it. But yeah, I mean, we didn't know what we were doing. We just had to figure it out, trial and error.
So, equally so at that time, I mean, was there any fear? And I ask this question because for the young voters that are in here, the young college students in there, was there any fear whatsoever where you were like, well, if we start talking about Trump, then we're going to lose this opportunity, this job, we're going to get blacklisted, our social media, wait, if we post this on social media, this is going to show up on people. Was there, was that fear a real fear between you guys, or was just, let's just go all in?
No, we were all Team Trump. I mean, I think before it was even popular to support Trump, I mean, we were all just diehard Trump people. I mean, we were willing to do anything. At the time, I really wasn't known. It was more or less the organization that was known. And so we were kind of the people behind the curtain pulling the strings and getting the people out there. But no, I don't think that there was anybody who actually had a genuine concern among our team. Now, when we went on college campuses, it was a lot different. Now you have people, you have sea of MAGA hats, people are more open to doing it now, right? It's a lot different as opposed to 2020 and 2016. People are more charismatic because they see what's happening in the country, what's happened the last 4 years of this dumpster fire. It's like that meme of the dog sitting in the room and everything around it's on fire and he's saying it's fine. I mean, that's what we're living right now.
100%. Going back though, I mean, how has the political climate changed? I know now you said you see people wearing college MAGA hats on college. A couple people, good amount of people in here wearing some MAGA hats. How has it changed? How has the political climate changed? Because now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but as we spoke about with Alex, it seems as if college campuses are the places where the most division and the most tension is. Is that true? Do you think the tension has worsened and the division has worsened from when you started the organization?
Yes and no. It really depends on where you're at. If you're going to UC Berkeley and you're wearing a MAGA hat, yeah, you're probably going to get yelled at or something like that. But I mean, I think what really has created a lot more division is these pro-Palestinian protests. What's going on the college campus where you have Jewish students being blocked from entering their classrooms, getting attacked on college campuses, just because maybe they support Israel. Or maybe they don't. Maybe they're just a Jewish student who just wants to go and, go to class, and they're getting attacked and they're getting chastised, and, the attacks online, I mean, they're amplified. That's one of the big things too. But when it comes to MAGA supporters, in North Carolina, I've been to about 7 or 8 of the campuses. You go to UNC, there's a lot more MAGA supporters there than there were in 2020 and 2016. And going back to the point, I think it really is because the alternative is someone with no qualifications. Like Alex was saying, I mean, she got delegates pledged to her. In Chicago, there was a group of delegates who wanted to change their vote, not vote for Kamala, but through, I think it was the rules board, they were prohibited from actually even changing their vote from Kamala to whoever else they wanted. I don't know the alternative. I mean, really, they really don't have anybody on their side, if you think about it, that could run. But so I mean, it's either you get another 4 years of what you just had, or you go back to 5 years ago of prosperity. And I think that a lot of young people, when they look at the prospects of getting out of college, looking at the economy, looking at the job market, seeing the stories of these young kids getting killed by illegal immigrants, I think that kind of scares some people. But then also you go look at inflation. The gas price under Trump, I think in 2019 it was like average $1.80. Now it's like an average of $3.70. And if you're a commuting student who lives 20 minutes away, you're coming back and forth every single day to class. That adds up. And then when you get out of college, are you even going to have the ability to get a job? I have friends who I graduated in 2019. I'm blessed. I was able to buy a house last year. Some of these guys, they have to live near the city because they're in finance or banking, and they're making, maybe 50, 60 to start. They're still living in apartments, and they're just throwing money out the door. And I'm talking rents that are about $200 to $2,500 a month in some of these areas. They're throwing money away. They can't afford to get a house, and they can't even save to get a house properly. Maybe they can put away $200 a month, but you know how long that's going to take to save? So, I mean, these are things I think a lot of young people are thinking about now.
And I think there's also, additionally to that, there is a fascinating time that we're living in because, like you said, it's not 4 years of theory. It's 4 years of, well, you've seen what Kamala, I mean, you could argue the fact, well, she was vice president, she wasn't really president. Well, I said in an interview the other day, is there anything that you would change about what Joe Biden did in his administration? No, everything was perfect. I mean, so there's 4 years of Trump and there's 4 years of Kamala. So you have both sides to pick up. I mean, paint me the picture, okay? November 5th comes around. 6th. Is it the 5th we wake up in the election, the decision will be out, or the 6th?
The 6th.
The 6th. So the 6th we wake up, right? Paint me the picture of what 4 years of Kamala looks like versus what 4 years of Trump looks like.
4 years of Kamala. Well, if I were to paint a picture, I would just put a canvas up there and throw some bird shit on it. That would be 4 years of Kamala. I mean, really, it would be no different. I mean, you got to think about Biden. Like, Biden at one point or another was actually a competent guy. I think he meant well at one point in his life, but I mean, he's obviously very steady decline. There was definitely conversations behind the scenes that, if you don't step down, back out of this race, I don't know what they said to him, but you don't get an incumbent to just back away like that. So there was, conversation. There was probably threats made, maybe something about Hunter. maybe something about, him being impeached before he's able to finish his term out. But I think you're going to get a lot of what you just saw, but it's going to be worse. There's a reason why Kamala Harris was voted by US Gov, one of the leading government polling agencies, as the furthest left-leaning senator in the Senate, even beyond Bernie Sanders, which is crazy to me because when we all remember Bernie, Feel the Burn 2016, that guy's nuts. And he wants, this universal health care, good God, the trade policies he wanted. There was a lot of things, and she kind of echoes those same, sort of policy points that Biden does, but she's more radical. So is she going to come for the Second Amendment? 100%. Is she going to want to redo the healthcare system to make it more like a Scandinavian country? 100%, which won't work here. We got too many people. It'll be like Canada. You'll have a wait list. So, you break your arm, you got to wait a week to go get a cast. I'll leave it at that. What you've just dealt with the last 4 years, just imagine that on steroids going, imagine you're on a bus, okay? Nobody's driving the bus. We're all on the bus. We're strapped in and we're heading for the cliff. That's what another 4 years of this. And then also, I also say this too, imagine America, the seam of America, right? The very fabric that has been built over, the last 250 years, that is starting to rip apart. The republic is starting to rip at the seams, and I think that with Kamala in office, and potentially another 4 years with the power of incumbency, that's going to fully rip. And we're not going to be able to come back from that. And that's my biggest fear going into this. Now, Donald Trump, he's already pledged the largest deportation operation in the history of the United States, closing our border. There's two parts to the border. You have the ramification side, which is the border defense, the wall, barbed wire, more border security. He's already pledged to hire 10,000 new agents, give them bonuses. I think it was 20,000 new agents and $10,000 bonuses, which is great. It's going to, definitely help us with ramification. But then you have the adjudication side of that, which the average date. So if you cross the border, let's say I jump over there and I get caught by CBP, they'll give you a phone. It'll have your court information in it, and the average adjudication date that you have to report into the court, which this never happens, of course, they're not going to report in, is like 350 days. Do you think, honestly, that you're going to know where this person's at in 350 days? No. It just doesn't happen. So we have to fix those two issues. Then, of course, he's talking about bringing back the SALT deductions on income tax, property tax up to $10,000, so you can take that off your taxes. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on car interest payments. These are things that people actually really care about. You're talking about the service workers. You're talking about people who have worked their entire life paying into Social Security, something that, they've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on throughout their life, and they're going to get taxed on that? That just doesn't make sense to me. It does not make sense to me. So for him to come in and do all of this stuff is going to fundamentally change our tax policy, our tax system, and then it's also going to put more money into people's pockets, which what's that going to do? They're going to be willing to spend more. That's going to boost the economy. So you see this every time. Just like when Obama left office, what did the economy do? It went up. Same thing when Reagan took over. The economy went booming. This is what happens. Democrats screw it up. Republicans come in. Everybody's like, oh, this is going to be great. The economy goes up. People are willing to spend more money. So
let me ask you, before we open up the floor to people that may have questions, your organization is obviously primarily focused on Students for Trump, right? What does the fight for America look like for students? Is it just getting out and voting? Is it also, at the dinner tables, mention it. Don't be the only things that keep out of the dinner table in business, at the table, business and religion and politics. Apologies. Actually talk about that when you're with students, when you're coworkers, when you're with your teacher. Actually talk about it. Like, what does that fight for America look like for the younger generation, the younger voters?
Well, I think really, and this is one thing I've noticed too, I really like it when young people speak up, like what that young man over there, when he was kind of playing devil's advocate, that was great. But, one thing I've noticed is, we're part of the Black Square generation. If everybody remembers George Floyd when Remember that?
Raise your hands. Who posted a black square?
So if you remember the George Floyd stuff,
There's like
whenever
20
if you
people.
posted the black square, then you put the link in your bio saying, hey, donate to this fraudulent organization that's going to use all the money to buy mansions across the country, which is what Black Lives Matter Incorporated did. People felt pressured into doing that. They felt peer pressured into doing that. Just like when you see these videos of some of these influencers going on college campuses and asking, let's say it's a group of girls and ask one of the girl, who are you voting for? And the girl says Kamala. Well, then what do all the other people say? Kamala. Because they're part of this friend group. They feel pressured in to supporting this notion or this idea that if they don't support the same things that they can't be friends. And there are some people who are out there like that. I've lost friends because I support Trump. Screw them. Well, actually, let me say it. Fuck them. I don't care. I am beyond all the political correctness. I'm beyond all of that BS. I just don't care anymore. And, if you really want to make an impact, you got to speak up. You got to go out there and do the hard work. You got to go get involved with a group like ours or Turning Point and go out there and register voters. Get people to the polls, motivate them, know the facts behind the candidate. We already know what Kamala's going to do. We already know what Trump's going to do. We've seen them. The last 4 years, Kamala, 4 years before that, Trump. We already know what's going to happen. So you guys should be pretty well versed in the economy of yesteryear under Trump and the economy that we're living under now. And just go out there and inform people. And don't be afraid of the backlash that you're going to get, because believe me, there's probably no one in this room, me, Laura, Alex, we get hate all the time. And I feed off of that hate. I love to see those comments of people. I was talking to Sean Farash the other day, if you know him, and we were just talking about the fact that some of these people, they will use ad hominems. They won't have an argument. Tell me why you support Kamala Harris without mentioning Donald Trump. People can't answer that question because they don't know what she stands for, because the only time that you ever saw Kamala Harris is when it's time to get the black vote. The only time. She ran for DA as an Asian Pacific Islander when she was going to run in San Francisco. She ran for Senate as the first Indian American, and now she's running for president as a black American. So, I just don't even know. It's like, Jesus, lady, pick whatever you're going to be and stick with it. It's just gotten beyond this. But no, Sean and I are actually in a competition, funny enough. I was going to mention this because he's got like a Trump impersonation, and I always pull it out sometimes. We're going to build the biggest wall. Mexico is going to pay for that wall. Believe me, we got to do it.
That's pretty good. Holy
We got to do it.
That's pretty good.
We got to
really
send that
good.
video to Sean.
I don't know if you guys, also, on top of that, I want to add additionally, I don't know if any of you guys in here saw Kamala's Fox interview. Did anybody see Kamala's Fox interview? Well, I don't know why you're clapping, but yeah, sure. Well, if you saw the interview, she was asked very straightforward questions. She says, well, your motto is turn the page. Well, if we look back on the last 3.5 pages of years, it's you. So what would you say you're turning the page? You know what I'm talking about with Donald Trump. And it's like lady.
Well, no, her response was like, when he said that, she was like, well, Donald Trump's running.
And she's like, you know what I'm saying? And he was like, no, I really don't know what you're saying. And I think that's what a lot of Americans have that same reaction. Well, you're saying, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, or you're going to fix the economy. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but the last 3.5 years you were involved and you were vice president. So I think if you would have done it the last 3.5 years, but I could be wrong. Who am I? Right?
I love it when they do say that, though. They say, what is that? They say, turn the page, and it's ironic because we're on that page right now. We're living that page. Or they'll say, we're never going back. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to go back to what we just lived. I would rather go back to Donald Trump. But every time they say something, it's almost immediate to what is going on right now in the dumpster fire we live in. It's very interesting, the language that they use.
It is. Does anybody have questions? Raise your hand. Anybody have questions? 2 questions. Okay, we're going to do those 2 questions and we're going to move on.
So I have a question. Me and my friends right here, we started a TikTok account, and basically we're just trying to spread awareness, trying to get people to register to vote, trying to show them what side, trying to show us our views, and we're getting, obviously, like you said, there's always a lot of backlash, and you know how you said about educating yourself on national politics, so you know you have to seem educated when you interview people. So what is some advice that you have for someone that's just starting out, that's trying to get the word out there, trying to spread awareness?
What a great question. That's a great question.
It is. It was a lot easier in 2015 to go viral on social media, I'll tell you that. The algorithms now are kind of quite trash. I would say this, you got to stick with the trends. You know, there's so many different things that you see these other pages doing where, you know, I'm not saying go do a TikTok dance or something like that, but there's ways in which they grab attention. I mean, you just got to find it. I mean, there's some videos out there where you got somebody playing like Grand Theft Auto on the top, and then on the bottom, they're talking policy points or something like that. I mean, I'm not really big into, you know, TikTok. I'm more of a Twitter guy, more of an Instagram person. But TikTok is definitely, and you want to, you know, the crazy thing is that TikTok is now becoming more conservative. I've seen a lot more conservative content on there compared to years ago, which is great. I know they're still censoring people, which is one of the reasons why I have not got on TikTok, because I don't want to gain 1 million followers and then one day they just decide, okay, we're going to ban you because you said, you know, something we don't like. But I would just say be innovative. You just got to think outside of the box, and you know, these street interviews are great. Going up to people, get yourself a little you know, microphone or something, hooks up to your camera. Go out there and interview people. Do the man on the street stuff. Go out there, make, you know, these, you know, selfie videos where you're just like breaking something down in a minute or less, you know, on a topic that you're well versed in. Make it funny, make it intuitive. That's the kind of stuff that I think really sticks, because, you know, I hate to say it, but the attention span of, you know, the average young person now is like, what, 15 seconds? So you got to kind of capitalize on that and, you know, make sure that you put the zingers in the beginning to make it where they want to watch the rest of it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Next question. I think that was behind you.
Hi there. So my name is Connor. I'm with Panther Now. It's FIU student, student media newspaper. So we're just covering this article we're done. I just kind of had a quick question. I guess as an economics student, haven't been too satisfied with some of the policies that Biden has conducted. You know, I feel like there's been some errors some missteps that have been made along the way. We saw that with some of the high inflation. But I want to talk specifically about Trump's policies when it comes to the economy. I had a few questions for you. And that was specifically Trump wanting to raise import taxes on companies by 60% for, you know, on Chinese goods, and around 20%, if I remember correctly, for like everyone else. So 60% import taxes on Chinese goods, 20% for everyone else. And as an economics student, I've learned tariffs are very inflationary. So as a first-time, you know, voter who's still feeling a little undecided, how can I feel comfortable wanting to vote for Trump, knowing these policies would cause inflation?
Well, you know, the reason why a lot of this is happening is because we've been screwed by China in many which ways, more than one. You know, when you talk about the key pharmaceuticals that we needed during COVID, that to make our medicines, my girlfriend, she's in her last year of pharmacy school, and she was telling me that there's a big shortage on a lot of things. Like now we have a saline shortage, you know, because of the hurricanes, but then they also have these key components that they use at sort of the research and development sites to make these drugs that we rely on China to get. One of the reasons why he is doing this is because he wants to bring manufacturing back to the United States, whether it be the auto industry, the steel industry, pharmaceutical manufacturing, you name it, textiles. They want to bring that back to the country. And one of the best ways to do that is by putting pressure on some of these other nations and making it a little bit more expensive for them to bring their product here. So then we can, in turn, build our own factories. You know, you talk about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Steeltown, USA. You look at Detroit, Michigan, the auto industry. These are things that were critical to the blue-collar worker, and all of those jobs, for the most part, except a few factories here and there, those jobs have been shipped overseas, shipped to Mexico, South America, China, Japan, you name it, Australia. He wants to bring that stuff back. That's really the goal here. I don't think that that's going to be something that lasts all 4 years. I think really it's a temporary thing to put pressure on some of these nations. And really it comes down to the fair share. You know, especially when you look at NATO and all these other countries, it's more than just manufacturing. China needs to pay their fair share. I mean, we are getting ripped off by them every single day. We're in trillions of debt to China. And so I think it's going to be temporary. I wouldn't worry too much about it.
That's a fair point. I was just concerned about the cost because 60% is a lot on consumers when it comes to Chinese products, and 20% too And I feel like even a short surge of inflation might push the economy into a recession, which I'm just very concerned about. I feel like that's something that I'm not just concerned about generally as an American. I don't want to pay the extra cost for having companies having to pay additional for importing from other countries.
No, I don't think it's going to happen that way. I really do believe that, you know, when he takes office, the economic advisors that are around him, I mean, it's just like in 2016, he brought in some of the best, smartest minds who helped with the economy. You know, we have to hold these nations accountable, and even if it is only temporary or a year, yeah, there is going to be some cost that the consumer has to take in, of course. That's natural, but that's how we're going to get our economy back on track, I think.
Awesome, guys. Please give a round of applause for Ryan Ford.